About you. All right, folks, time to get started. And this is Krishna Vedula from Indo-Universal Collaboration for Engineering Education, coming to you from Hyderabad, India. Welcome to the IFES GEDC Global Webinar. And today the special webinar is from the GEDC Industry Forum on Discovery and Innovation Webinar, Opportunities After COVID. How can university-industry relationships succeed? So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in different parts of the world. Our moderator and the key person who's going to lead this discussion is Dr. Andrea Belz, Vice Dean for Transformative Initiatives at USC Viterbi School of Engineering. She will be joined by panelists with global expertise in university-industry partnerships for a candid conversation on this topic. And you might want to Google her and find a little more details about her background. She's actually also the professor of practice at the School of Engineering, where she specializes in engineering policy and technology strategy. She also currently serves as the president-elect of IEEE Technology and Engineering Management Society. She has served as division director of the National Science Foundation, where she oversaw the agency's translational research activities and more than $300 million annual budget, including roughly 300 startups annually. So I could go on and on and on, but I'd much rather listen to her and her team at this presentation. So over to you, Andrea. You have to unmute yourself, I think.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure, now we can hear you. Yeah, thank you.
No, can you hear me? Perfect. It's such a pleasure to be here today. Our vision is to have a chance to have a conversation with our colleagues from industry to hear about how our approach to industry university partnerships is evolving. We've learned so much in Zoom and in over the course of the pandemic about how to work together collaboratively. And so it would be interesting to hear what the vision looks like now that we're coming out of the pandemic, how these initiatives are transforming. So I do want to make sure that we have time to meet our panelists before we jump into the conversation. So maybe we can take a moment and have our colleagues introduce themselves. Ignacio, do you want to introduce yourself first?
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Thank you very much. First of all, it is a pleasure to be here. I'm Ignacio Sierra. I'm working in IBM, and I am a program manager on innovation. And for one department, it's technical lifecycle support. And what I do is I take the development from research and I try to implement and to improve the processes, internal processes, with the different research that we make and apply to the company. Apart from that, I have a role that it's an IBM role that is IBM ambassador, and this is a link between the company and the university. What we try is to make sure that the university use our product and that there is a connection between the university and IBM. And this is, I don't want to take much of the time presenting myself, so it's better that we start the conversation. Thank you very much.
Fantastic, thank you. And Glenn, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm the lucky guy at Airbus to have the responsibility to deliver our ambition of having a zero-emission commercial aircraft in service by 2035. It's an ambition that I think is a really important one, both from a business perspective in terms of being able to operate in a world that is going to be less and less tolerant for climate impact. And I think also in a moral sense, it's important because we want to be able to physically connect society. We've realized during COVID that that's really important, but we need to get rid of the climate impact in order to continue to do that.
That is terrific. And I think we may have a chance to delve more into that, but let's zoom out. And I'll say from the 30,000 foot view, which I guess is appropriate with Airbus on the call here. Let's talk a little bit about how you view these partnerships today. You know, in the United States, we've seen that industrial spending on basic research really has outpaced federal spending. And so as a result, the role that industry has in funding basic research and conducting it has changed. So maybe I'll just start with Ignacio, which is in the time that you've been doing your innovation programs, if you look from the beginning to today, what's changed in terms of how you think about industries or universities and how you can partner with them? For instance, do you partner with them more on recruiting, less on research, or different types of research? How do you view these relationships?
Okay, my my view about that is, okay, IBM, to be honest, IBM has its own research department. We have around 3,000 researchers worldwide, and but I will be my overall view. There are two types of companies: the one that has the research inside, and the ones that outsource the research. So IBM is one of them that has insourced the research. So for a company like IBM, if you want to collaborate with them, you have to align to the roadmap, to the development roadmap. And if you align to if one university align to the development roadmap, can be in contact with our research team and can collaborate. It's different, my view from university, because I talk to them a lot, is that there is another type of company that, okay, they outsource the research to the university, so this is more flexible for the company, and they can research in their own programs. But if you want to research with IBM, you have to align with it. And if someone is interested, okay, we have a web page, research.ibm.com, where we put our main focus. And also you can, there is an interesting video that is 5 in 5. Every 5 years, we make a video what the researcher thinks that will be the main achievements in the next 5 years. And it's quite interesting. Sometimes we you know, we get the point, and you can see the video from last 5 years and say, okay, this was right and this was not right. But it's interesting. It's quite interesting. If you are researchers, you can look to the videos, and it's interesting to see, not only to see the last one, to go backward and see what we thought that these 5 years will come.
IBM is such a great company that it's hard to imagine IBM getting it wrong. So it would be interesting. I'm sure it's interesting to watch those. But it sounds like you mentioned a website. Is that really the most effective way for our university colleagues to hear about what's happening in IBM? And is that the most effective way for us to learn about your research opportunities, or are there other places that you tend to go to meet university researchers?
Yeah, you know, in the website you have some links that you can contact the researchers, but my advice is that, okay, if you are a university, first of all, look and try to find an ambassador. An ambassador, normally IBM in each city or its state will have someone that is a link between IBM and the university, and this will give the university the opportunity to have access to the software, to have access, for example, in quantum computing. It's one of our key developments. You can access the quantum and so on, and a program that is developing quantum called Qiskit, and start playing around with it. So first of all, my advice is, okay, contact your ambassador, get in contact with them, get access to IBM Academic Initiative. That is an initiative. Go to a skill base. In a skill base, we have a lot of courses that you can do, depending if you are a student or you are a PhD and so on. And my third advice is, okay, IBM has some awards. Every year we have a PhD awards, we have a new faculty awards, and so on. Try to align, because the awards are aligned to our main focuses, main technologies right now, artificial intelligence and quantum computing. And try to get this prize. You will be, if you try to develop in these areas and your university is quite good there, probably if you win the prize, you will be in contact with the top developers, with the top researchers, and then it will be easier to. These are my mainly advice, Andrea.
So those are really great suggestions, the ambassadors and then the prizes. And if there's one thing that academics like to do, it's compete for prizes. So thank you for that set of suggestions. So Glenn, tell us about Airbus. Do you work with an ambassador model also? How do you operate in finding people? And if you can expand a little bit on the ambassadors and maybe, or whatever your terminology is for it, and talk a little bit about during the pandemic, how those ambassadors operated and what you've learned from that experience and how it's changing how you operate today.
Sure. So I think one of the things we've definitely seen with the ambition to bring a zero-emission commercial aircraft to reality is that we have needed to connect with the broader spectrum of either industrial partners or academic partners than what we've typically engaged with. I'd say as Airbus, we have typically connected with aeronautical specialist universities. That's sort of our classical ecosystem, and they're people who have provided a lot of value to us over the last few decades. What we see in this transition to hydrogen propulsion, when we start talking about technologies like fuel cells and liquid hydrogen storage, hydrogen distribution across the aircraft, and even the energy ecosystem, as well as the climate impact of different propulsion types, is that we are starting to engage an academic ecosystem which is much wider, and some of that has been triggered by our, I guess, communication on this ambition. It was the intent to trigger both an academic and industrial discussion by communicating very early. We have also the ambassador scheme, similarly to what Ignacio has described, where we have connections with different universities. And I think in Airbus's world, where we're really in the world of much more maybe applied research than fundamental research, where others might be more focused on fundamental research, we're really interested in universities that are on the same, have the same technology focus as we do, that are keen to solve problems, find solutions, but to do that in a fairly specific time frame, because there are essentially industrial or applied consequences of getting that right, or getting those solutions to some of the problems available. And I think that's something which is going to be more and more important. You mentioned, Andrea, earlier, that there is a higher percentage of funding coming from the industrial sector than the public sector. I think that sort of mindset shift, where there are industrial consequences to some of the research, some of the activities being done by academia to support industry, I think is really important, that we have this culture, shared culture in the collaborations that we need to do together.
So shared culture is such an interesting topic. At the end of the day, we all broadcast and receive cultural signals when we go to work. So Glenn, maybe you can follow up on that statement and talk about some of the cultural barriers that you run into. So what I heard you say was that you're now engaging with different disciplines, different parts of the academic ecosystem. Without naming names, maybe you can talk a little bit about what happens when you try to engage. And by the way, I think my webcam has just been turned off to support my internet connection. Hopefully you can still hear me. Talk a little bit about the cultural challenges you run into when you try to engage.
I think the main cultural challenge is really about time frame, the time frames that perhaps sometimes academia and industry are focused on. That, like I was saying earlier, there are often industrial consequences, opportunities, for example, that can be secured if research is delivered in a given time frame. And the stereotype sometimes that industry might have of academia is that there's no sort of time frame. Activity research is not time bound. The purpose is to educate ourselves, and I think that we need to get that balance right in creating these collaborations where we find the right sort of win-win balance between academia's need and industry's need, and make sure that that's explicit from the outset, what the two partners or even several partners want to get from jointly studying, jointly working on different projects.
So Ignacio, maybe you can add to that the sense of urgency or a sense of timing is what I hear Glenn saying. Ignacio, do you think IBM experiences those same challenges? And do you have specific recommendations on how university researchers or partnership teams can address that?
You know, I totally agree. The time frame is totally different in the university than in the companies, because you know the companies you have to deliver, and if you are you have a project, probably you will have the sprints, will have the milestone, you have to deliver the proof of concept, and you have a limited time frame. Okay, even the mindset is different. You know, I started my PhD 2 years ago, and it was very difficult to change my mindset, because you know when someone in a company think about research, they think about researching something that should be useful and deliver in 1 to 2 years. If you are looking in the normal, I'm not saying that always is like this in university, but sometimes in the university, no one is thinking about something that it's, they are not thinking about a proof of concept. They are just thinking, okay, let's try this, and let's try and let's prove that it's possible, and not thinking in the implementation. And when you are in a company, normally you are always thinking, okay, we have to make business, and to make business, we have to deliver something. To deliver something, we have to make a proof of concept, and this should be useful. And you know, it's not black and white, but I'm putting it black and white to show it clearly. So I totally agree with Glenn, and how to solve it. I think it's quite difficult, you know, because as Glenn mentioned, one of the key goals of the university is to train people, and the key goal of the company is to earn money. So it's but there is a cultural change, because the governments and all the money that the different governments are putting to do research are, we need to make a collaboration between universities and the enterprises, and both of us has to change the mindset to learn about each other and to share the goals and to try to achieve them. And this is my view. I don't have a magical solution, to be honest, Andrea.
I think that
if I could add, I think another area where there's maybe a cultural shift, especially if we come back to that point about where the funding for research is coming from. When we were first looking at the zero-emission aircraft activities and some of the challenges we've got, it was even difficult for us to figure out what were the universities who were the best in, for example, fuel cell electrochemistry. What are the universities with the most experience of liquid hydrogen storage or liquid hydrogen pumping? And I think if we want to create more and more partnerships and more value through these relationships, I think universities need a little bit to try and figure out what the different companies, what the different industries need, and to go into a sales mode so that they expose more of what they're capable of and what they're doing in areas where business have gaps or have some needs. It's not necessarily going to arrive on a plate all nicely packaged. It's something that we need help to understand the academic landscape to be able to maximize our relationship with it.
Well, if there's one word that academics probably are allergic to, it's sales. And so your comments are so interesting because they suggest that universities, to be competitive, are not just competing on their technologies, but also on their ability to think about words like proof of concept and deliverables and meeting other needs beyond curiosity-driven research. So maybe Glenn, you can continue your line of thought on this and talk about if you were evaluating two universities with similar technologies, and one of them maybe was a little bit more oriented toward proof of concept, how would that line up in your own evaluation of these two as potential partners? In other words, when you're looking at partners, how important is that as a criterion for selection to work with you?
Yeah, I fully agree with what Ignacio was saying earlier about essentially minimum viable products or demonstration and getting to those points as quickly as possible in any project that we're doing, because that starts to be the applied application that ultimately we're interested in industry. So the quicker we can get to those sort of schemes, the more we see in capability of universities to be able to get to that point, then for sure the more interested we would be in collaboration. It's not as much of interest for us for the activity to remain in the, let's say, paper world for too long.
So, Ignacio, maybe you can continue that line of thought about the role of universities in writing papers versus thinking about a more accelerated timetable. And so if you're looking at evaluating universities, how important is the timetable in your evaluation criteria?
Yeah, okay. If I think about some of the collaborations that IBM has started with some universities, the main point, as I mentioned at the beginning, is okay, you have to be aligned with the research. I mean, with the interest of the company. For us, it's augmented technology and quantum. For as Glenn mentioned, for them it's zero emission. So first of all, your department has to be one of the key players in this area. And second, of course, you have to have something that can be an MVP, a minimum viable product soon. So writing a paper, I think that it's very good for university, and normally in the different countries, this is how they rate the university, how many papers, how many times you have, they have mentioned your paper in the different new papers and so on. But for the industry, to be honest, the main goal is to make a viable product as soon as possible, evaluate if this is useful for the different companies, and implement that. And it should be something that can be replicated as quick as possible. So, this is something that it's a key point. And of course, there is another line that is okay. If I think about the development in 5 years, probably there are some developments in IBM for sure. But first of all, you have to think about deliverables, and second, there will be another long-term development, but probably there will be less opportunities to make this, because we have to make money at the end, and we have to develop products and so on. We even not only IBM, all the companies buys companies to get the latest technology, and you buy a whole company to get this development. So if you think about university and joint development, it's the same. If you are a university and you are the top one in one area that is of an interest to IBM, probably it will be very easy to knock the door to us and say, okay, I want to collaborate with you. If you don't have anything, I mean anything, you have papers and so on, but you are not key, or it's a product that is a lot of theory, that I'm not saying that it's not important, it will be a little bit tough. This at least it is my personal view. Maybe another statement in IBM think in a different way, but from my point of view, this is key.
So, you're bringing up something that I hadn't thought about fully, which is the impact of someone's career stage. So for instance, you said the papers may not be as important as the ability to keep advancing towards something that can be replicated. And yet the whole university system incentivizes people to write papers. Yeah. And in particular, we see this with junior faculty who are really working on interesting problems. So my question, and Ignacio, maybe we start with you on this one, is do you find that it's challenging, for instance, to work with more junior faculty who are working toward their tenure and promotion process? Or do you find it's easier to work with the more junior faculty where they're launching new research agendas that they expect to pursue for 20 years? What's your practical hands-on experience in terms of how career stage impacts the success of a collaboration? And Glenn, of course, will be interested in Airbus's experience on this also. Ignacio, what do you think?
Okay, here I have two thoughts. One thought, it's okay. Normally, when you have a junior university, the advantage is that it's smaller, so you can move things quicker, because normally a university, like a big company like IBM, moving things is quite difficult. You have to go through a process where you get approval for the budget and so on. So working with the youngest university is quicker to move anything, to have an agreement with them, to sign with them, and so on. When it's a big and old university, they have the same process. They have a bunch of lawyers like IBM to make an agreement. They have to review both and so on. So the process is slower. This is my my view. On the other hand, as you mentioned, the people on youngest people, it's interested in making paper because it's, they are rated by this one. They are rated with the papers and how well they do, how many citations they have. So this is a disadvantage. And with the old ones, normally you have more senior people, you have researchers with a high level, but as Glenn mentioned, it's very difficult to say, okay, this is the top university in this area. And this is not clear. The selling process is not as good as it should. And this is my view.
That's interesting because you talked not just about the stage of the faculty member, but also the stage of the university and how mature their entire ecosystem is in terms of partnering with industry. So those are two different dimensions of the junior senior element that may impact the speed at which these partnerships develop. Glenn, what do you think?
Yeah, I think some of the most successful collaborations that we've had have involved a variety in the same university, a variety of people involved. So from students through to professors, deans, and researchers. And I think for us, it's been really valuable to work like that because it's important to have some kind of strategic alignment on the topics that we want to work on, when time is important, when results are important. I think we get the most benefit from engaging almost the full chain of university to make sure that our joint projects are really successful. And I think the other dimension that's important to us, that's maybe quite interesting, is that we're very keen to see universities being able to leverage an ecosystem outside of the university. So not just the students, professors, deans, and researchers inside a given university, but potentially other universities and potentially other industrial partners. And that brings another challenge to the table, because it means that a university and the set of skills that those profiles have inside a university needs also to be capable of managing, of collaborating, of leading across multiple profiles of participants, and that's something which we're more and more keen to be seeing, because we see that when that's done well, the projects can be really successful.
So you've touched on another really interesting question, which is academics as leaders and the importance of leadership skills in managing these projects. Can you be concrete about some of the leadership capabilities that you think are most important, what you've seen in your partnerships that really make a project go? Maybe we start with Glenn on this one.
Yeah, so I mean, communication is one we've already touched on, which is to a certain extent about selling, about people understanding why a given project is important, why they should participate in the project, whether it's inside a university or attracting other partners outside of a university. And then probably the other really important characteristic leadership skill would be about delivering, about pulling everybody together with the right rhythm and focus on deliverables, which we've already touched on, but it's maybe not obvious that that's a leadership skill, but it is. Certainly in an industrial context, it really is.
So, Ignacio, maybe you can continue along those lines, but talk a little bit also about the students who get trained in those kinds of initiatives or activities. So for instance, do you find that you hire those students, or are you really just trying to work with the faculty member and the students are less of a priority for you? How do you view the entire team in the university?
You know, at the moment in technology, like IBM is a technology company, the students are key. You know, there is a lack of intellectual capital, to be honest, to get high skilled people. And one of our key initiatives is to train the people to make them know our technology, and that's why we have the university program to share with them our software. There is a platform called Skill Base where you can go and learn about quantum or artificial intelligence and all of our main lines. And you have a bunch of courses, a bunch of lectures there. And it's key for us to get this intellectual capital. And you know, during the pandemic, it was, or not during the pandemic, let's say it was a very good improvements in the university because they were forced to make a digitalization. I mean, to have rooms with video and so on. So in the past, it was harder to get a room with video, audio, and so on than to make a remote lecture about something. Right now, for us, it's easier. I can contact someone, I don't know, in Madrid and get here in Sevilla a lecture because we have a very good connection right now after the pandemic. We have rooms where you can teach in remote and so on. So this was a quite good change with the pandemic. And also, as I mentioned, intellectual capital for us is very important. So we are very interested in making the different universities or the different people in the university know that we are interested in the key players in their universities, and that we are not only looking for the, let's say, only technology people, because in artificial intelligence, when you apply to the different fields, you need linguistic people, you need, I don't know, neuroscientifics and so on to make some improvement. For example, in natural language processing or video processing, you need different skills. And you know, one of the things that was difficult, of course, was, okay, during the pandemic, for the newcomers, it was a little bit more difficult to train them, because normally when you hire a newbie, it's better to have them on site. But you know, we are used from some years ago to make all our work remote. So for us, it was not a big deal. But on my relationship with the university, I saw that it was difficult for many companies to get new hires during the pandemic, because there were not direct relationship with the new employees, and this slowed down the new hiring. This my overall view, and that it was not a big challenge for the IT companies, but that it was a challenge for the normal traditional companies.
Oh, that's interesting. And Glenn may have some comments. So I do want to say that we can start taking questions shortly. And so if you have questions, please go ahead and enter them into the question chat. And if we don't have too many questions, I have lots of questions, so I can continue. But I think Ignacio's point is really interesting, that some of the companies that were already so highly dependent on working digitally maybe were better positioned to transition to remote work during the pandemic. However, of course, many of the large companies that we all think of already had extensive digital workflows. So Glenn, maybe you can talk about what was the experience at Airbus, and when you were hiring students in particular, was it harder to onboard them? Was there really no change because you were already used to operating globally? How did that go?
Yeah, I think luckily at Airbus, we'd already been some way through our digital transformation, meaning that we had a suite of tools which allowed us to quite quickly get into a new modus operandi, at least for office-based workers. For our industrial system, when we're building aircraft, it's a different story, and new modus operandi had to be put in place to allow people to work safely in an industrial context. Certainly, when it came to onboarding people, that was definitely a challenge and something that had to be addressed through the establishment of new rituals to kind of compensate for the natural physical meetings which occur across the teams. I think in the context of universities globally, COVID has probably created an opportunity somehow, because we've realized how good we are at collaborating remotely. And it means that where perhaps Airbus in the past has had the core partners maybe located physically not so far from its main industrial centers, we can have partners which are really located anywhere in the world, and it means really that, you know, the global players that have the best technical capabilities, the best ability to deliver, and the best ecosystems that they are connected to and that they can leverage are really the ones that we want to work with in the future, and independent of where those universities are located. So there's maybe a huge opportunity there coming out of COVID for our relationships.
So one of the questions that came in was whether, does that change mean that you're open, for instance, to having researchers call you and pitch you if they're from universities that maybe you haven't partnered with before? Or should new universities send you a simple one sheet? If you're open to partnering with institutions that maybe are new to your ecosystem, how can someone get in front of you and say, here's what I have? What's the best technique to do that?
Yeah, I mean, we're communicating quite a lot on what we're doing on zero emission, on hydrogen propulsion. And one of the reasons that we are is because we want to, let's say, excite the ecosystem and engage it in achieving the ambition. If there are people watching this that believe that they have, for example, exceptional capabilities when it comes to fuel cell stacks, membrane electrochemistry, or liquid hydrogen storage and distribution and pumping, then, you know, definitely please get in touch. You can find me on LinkedIn. It's a relevant starting point, but, you know, I'm interested in understanding what your unique selling point is, why it is.
Oh, Ignacio, can you still hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Can you hear Glenn?
No, I don't, you know.
So maybe we'll continue, and hopefully Glenn's internet service will be restored. But what I heard him say was that people could find him on LinkedIn if they had technologies that were very relevant to his interests at Airbus. And so, Ignacio, maybe you can continue. Oh, good. And Glenn, it appears that you're back. Welcome back.
Sorry about that. Not sure what happened.
No worries. We are here, and I was just saying that what I heard you say was that people should absolutely find you on LinkedIn if they wanted to get in touch with you with relevant technologies. Ignacio, is that your suggestion at IBM also? And maybe you can even walk us through the nuts and bolts. What should someone say in that LinkedIn message so that you are positively disposed toward creating a first meeting?
Is this question for me, Andrea, or for
Ignacio, is that okay? You can start with this, and then if Glenn has some tips, we can add to that. So go ahead.
Okay, my suggestion is it's a little bit different because, as I mentioned, we have this ambassador role. But anyway, if you don't have an ambassador for your university, you can ping me in LinkedIn. I will try to find your ambassador, or maybe someone local that can help you to explain you the different programs that we have, like the research page that I mentioned before, the research.ibm.com, where there you can make suggestions and be in contact with the researchers, and also we'll explain you the different awards that we have, the PhD Follow Award, or the Mentor Fellowship Award, or the IBM Academic Award. There are 3 awards that we have yearly for different projects, or also the Call for Code, that is another initiative from IBM, that is a social initiative where we try to solve problems about food and about energy and so on, and we make the Call for Code, and there are some awards there also, but if you don't find the ambassador, you can you can find me in LinkedIn and Slack me, and I will try to find a contact for you, because we have a network worldwide for academics. So there is a group that it's more or less volunteer, this type of people, but because they have relation with the universities, and they will try to help you to understand the different programs that we have in IBM for academics, that are different ones. And if you think about research, as I mentioned, first of all, my suggestion is, look to the key initiative from IBM, because if you are not aligned in the key initiative, it will be very difficult. This is my personal opinion. But if you are aligned with these topics, like artificial intelligence, quantum computing, security, and 2 or 3 more, could be materials also, but materials more related to artificial intelligence. We are using artificial intelligence to get new materials. And watch the 5 in 5. I encourage to do that, because you will see more or less where we are investigating and what is our roadmap. And if you are aligned, of course, try to get in contact with your ambassador, try to get in contact with researchers in IBM, and then start from there, because it's this is the way to go. The ambassador will help you to make the connection.
And you really have to line up with the strategic goals of the company.
Yeah.
So Glenn, maybe continuing with the idea of alignment, can you speak for a minute about your concerns about potential conflicts of interest when you work with universities? We have a question on this. How important, or how much do you concern yourselves with conflicts of interest? And is that an important part of your due diligence process?
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially when it comes to intellectual property, we, as an industrial player, we've got to be able to use whatever intellectual property is developed in a way which ultimately allows us to get whatever it is in terms of technology ultimately onto an aircraft. And so we do have in some scenarios, they're pretty rare, where for whatever reason we just can't align on the right intellectual property conditions between us and a partner. In most cases, the huge majority, we do find a way to proceed together, but it's really important to have no conflict of interest in that area, because it can be a major stumbling block in getting even the collaboration started.
So the importance of validating that there are no conflicts on the IP is really important for you.
Yeah,
Ignacio,
absolutely.
would you agree with that statement?
Totally agree. Normally, the company, as I mentioned, for every project, we have an agreement with the university. There is a we review it with our lawyers and also with the university lawyers. And for key projects, we have an NDA, non-disclosure agreement, that you cannot even talk about the developments.
So that is the confidentiality provisions are just as important as the conflict of interest concerns, is what I'm hearing you say.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be a big challenge in a university culture where openness and academic freedom are really cherished values. So I can see that that would be another concern. One question, and maybe I'll start with Glenn on this one, is that your ambitions for these zero-emission vehicles are strong and ambitious. And so how much is that driven by financial needs? How much is it driven by broader needs and the desire to have broader impact in particular? I think in academia, we have so many people who are really interested in meeting, for instance, the grand challenges as articulated by the National Academy of Engineering here in the US and in other academies around the world. That maybe is a stronger motivator for some of our academic colleagues than the financial ones. And so does that pose a cultural challenge for you as you're working with these partners?
Sure. I think, though, that the ambition to have zero-emission aircraft, it really aligns well with a sort of societal purpose and a business or financial necessity. We're talking here about having the world's first large commercial zero-emission aircraft. I mean, from a societal perspective, I think many of us will agree that there's a huge benefit to be able to physically connect across countries or across regions. And the ambition here is to be able to do that with zero or extremely low climate impact. And I think that's something which motivates us. It's something that motivates me at Airbus. And we see it as a huge motivator for many of our partners, whether that's industrial partners or academic partners. And yeah, I think it's important that we are working on projects which do have a societal interest, a societal benefit, and hopefully that'll excite more universities to want to work with us and help us with this ambition, as well as encourage talent in these universities to want to come and work with us and join us and help us achieve that ambition. I think it's an incredible purpose that we've set ourselves, an incredible ambition, and one that I think we can be very proud to be working on.
I absolutely would agree with that. It is a large ambition, and Ignacio has spoken a couple of times about the quantum computing and the quantum computing revolution that I think is going to be enabled with some of the IBM technologies. So I think we probably have time just for a closing comment. You have people on the line who are from universities who are very interested in creating collaborations with you. Ignacio, what's your one parting statement for all of these people who would love to work with you? What would you like to say to them?
Okay, I already say that we are open to collaborate with universities. As I mentioned, the only thing is that we should be aligned in the technology or the development researches that they are making. Feel free to contact your not only for research, also for requirement. Contact your local ambassador. If you don't find this one, link me, LinkedIn me, and I will try to help you. And it's very important for us that people in the university community knows about IBM, researchers and students. And we are proud to have one of the largest researchers community inside of the company, looking to another companies, comparing to another companies. And we are open for collaboration if we are online, so aligned, I mean. So this is my message.
Online and aligned, an excellent combination. Yeah. So Glenn, what is your final message to our community here?
Yeah, we have an incredible ambition at Airbus to bring a zero-emission commercial aircraft to reality by 2035. We're humble enough to know that we can't do this on our own. If you think you can help us, please reach out, especially if you're at the cutting edge on hydrogen systems, hydrogen storage, distribution, fuel cell electrochemistry. I'd be interested to hear from you. And please encourage your students, or if you're a student, please look at the careers website on airbus.com, where we've got lots of job openings, and we'll continue to do so again to achieve this ambition.
Fantastic. And so with that, I'm going to try to turn my webcam back on just for a moment.
Andrea,
a fantastic job, Andrea, of this discussion with Ignacio and Glenn. Thank you so much. I'm going to defer to Hans Hoyer for his closing comments. Come in, Hans.
Thank you very much. Andrea, I want to thank you for facilitating this very, very thoughtful dialogue between Ignacio and Glenn. And the seeds I'd like to plant is I hope to see our wonderful speakers and our audience in Cape Town at the end of November. I'm co-chair working with some exceptional leaders in Africa to bring together not only professors and not only some government representatives and many companies, but students. The notion of engaging students in our global conference is of increasing importance to us, and also for students not only to dialogue among themselves, and we're bringing students from the US, from Europe to Africa to build relationships, but also for students to dialogue with deans, for example, and corporate members. So this is a very, very important strategic priority for as we move and will be in Cape Town. I want to encourage many of you to come. We will be giving several global awards focusing on issues of sustainability, diversity, the Duncan Fraser Award per se, without going to details. And we've just recently I've identified the winners of this year. We'll be celebrating that opportunity per se. Final comment, very important to us, the academic community, and the corporate community, also with the African leadership at governmental others. And we're working very closely to bring many of the African institutions together to dialogue among themselves and strengthen those particular networks within Africa and certainly globally. So Andrea, you've done a beautiful job in facilitating these awesome colleagues, Ignacio, Glenn. I look forward to meet you in the future. And thank you kindly, all of us, for joining us today. Peace be with you.
Thank you, everybody. Be happy, be safe, and be healthy. Okay? Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.